I'm kind of running shotgun today, but my name is David Hernley. I'm the lead developer of Starship Horizons, which is a bridge simulator. We're actually showing it in its alpha stages here at MAGFest over in Baltimore 1 and 2, and we're actually using Arduinos for various aspects of immersion for our project, which is part of the reason I'm here today.
And I'm Joyce Weisbecker. I'm an indie game developer who's written and sold 7 video games. I've also designed analog circuits for real-time target tracking, like my cred on the hardware side. And I do data analytics, and I've got a BSc in electrical engineering and another bachelor's in actuarial science and decision sciences on the software end, and a master's in computer science. So I don't do a lot of embedded projects, but I've done embedded projects as parts of things, and I'm really into the games and AI end of what you can do with these things. So as someone who's partly a beginner in some aspects and partly experienced, I figured what I want to do is tell people why beginners should use an Arduino and why experienced people are really hot on using this in the workplace. So this is also a job skill. Yes?
Did you turn your mic up a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. How about we turn it on? Or stand down?
Just get closer.
How about we just point it down to my height instead of the last speaker? Okay. Is that doing it now? Nope. Now? Oh yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Joyce Weisbecker, indie game designer, hardware person, and my thing is, you can learn. I wish there had been an Arduino when I was learning this 30 years ago, because I had bits and pieces learned from the electrical engineering side, doing single board computers, and bits and pieces from the assembly language programming side on the computer science degree. And then lots of hobby projects figuring out how you can make games with it. It's much easier now. So this is the motivation for this. We're going to see some examples of extreme case modding for Arduino. That's when you take a do-it-yourself project from the internet and customize it to something unique, such as animatronic cosplay props, interactive art installations, wearable games, plush toys that actually play games with you. So we'll get started with a slide. Oh, sorry. I'm not prepared. Sorry about this. Didn't have my props ready. This is an Altoids-Tin. For people who do not know, this is the size of the games and projects we're talking about building. And this is Tetris-In-An-Altoids-Tin. This is what you basically start with. Not all that cool unless you're actually into hardware and programming. But you can find this as a do-it-yourself project on the internet, and that's our starting point. This is not to be confused with Altoids Tetris, which is our project, which unfortunately many beginners are stuck doing. Altoids and Tetris-inspired artwork, but our artwork is actually going to play Tetris. So, first of all, since we're at MAGFest, I just want to give a shout out to Trash 80 and his Arduino Boy. The Arduino Boy transforms a Game Boy into a MIDI instrument for chiptunes. Now this is going to be far beyond what case modding does, but it's a great example of the cool things you can do with Arduino once you know electronics and programming. But you really have to know electronics and programming to do that. But hey, anyone familiar with Trash 80s?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, cool, right? Okay, so now back to beginner things. Nekomimi, the animatronic cat ears that move the way, they are controlled by moving your head. The way you move your head moves the ears in different patterns. Now, my question to everyone is, what does Nekomimi have to do with case modding? You know, I'm sure you're familiar, like you put lights on your PC case and cool decals and everything, but this is what I'm talking about, case modding. Would anyone like to hazard a guess what this was the original, that this is the modified case for? There's the hint, is that the ears move when you move your head. Ah, okay. It's a Wii nunchuck that they've stripped out the plastic case and sewn into the cap. Case modding to the extreme. Okay? Now you see where I'm going with this. The hard part is, this is actually also a mashup of 2 do-it-yourself projects. So what is the second thing that was case modeled to get this to work? Yeah, somebody's carrying. And what does that? Airplane, RC airplane servos. Now, the cool thing about this is that you can download Arduino device drivers for the Wii nunchuck and for all types of servos for all different projects. So in other words, the hard part is already done for you. All your program has to do is listen for head movements, head motion signals from the Wii nunchuck, and then send the appropriate sequence of commands to the servos, at each servo at the right time. That's not a big programming job. And you have something really cool and unique to show for it. And it's a great beginner project. So this process may sound familiar to some of you. In the workplace, they call it rapid prototyping with commercial off-the-shelf components, abbreviated as COTS and pronounced POTS. In the Arduino world, one type of open source POTS component is a shield. An Arduino shield is a daughter board that can be stacked on top of the Arduino board on top of another shield. And of course, there are open source Arduino device drivers for shields, as well as for many types of sensors, servos, input devices, and displays. And in fact, all Arduino hardware and software is open source, so you can save some money by building anything you don't want to buy. Now, before we go any further, I want to say, if none of this makes any sense to you, and don't worry, the technical part for the experienced people is like 5 minutes at the beginning, and then we're going to go right back into right beginners and the kind of stuff you can do to get right into it. But I figure some people are doing some of this at school, they're doing some of this at work, they just want to get more into it. They come from hardware, software, so they're beginning on the other side, not necessarily both. So, before we go any further, I want you to know, you don't really need to know any of this, but you probably noticed I've been throwing around some old school terms that aren't strictly appropriate for a modern microcontroller system, if you work with this stuff. But most of you will follow what I mean, and if you don't, again, don't worry, you won't need any of this for what follows. First, quick show of hands so I can assess the terminology. Who here has ever burned an EEPROM? Hey, yes! Still around. We haven't died off yet. Who's compiled a ROM image from your own source code? Yes. Software and hardware people. Who's ever used a ROM file with an emulator? Because that counts too. This is all techie stuff. You may not think so, but it is hardcore. Who has installed their own graphics card? Yeah, see, you've done software and hardware to the level that you need for these projects. And anyone who didn't raise their hand, have you at least plugged a game card into an 8-bit console? Okay, and those of you who haven't, go over to the console room and play the 8-bit games. You don't know what you're missing.
Yeah, but you have to clean it first.
Right, because the ROM part, hopefully no one here believes that the reason they call it a game part is because it's like an 8-cap cartridge and has a tape in it. You know it has a ROM chip in it, and you're just replacing the ROM daughter board when you plug in the game part. And if you didn't know that before, you now know some high-tech embedded hardware terminology. So I'm just going to use these terms, you know, like device drivers, even though, so let me go over fast. Even though a modern microcontroller that is used in the Arduino, the Megas, are system on a chip, so there's no separate ROM chip, and of course there's no operating system, you sort of know what I'm talking about when I say device driver or flashing the BIOS instead of burning a EEPROM. So I'm just going to use it loosely because we're not going to get into the tech details. Okay, so, and again, if none of this makes any sense to you, don't worry. The real talk will be, I'm just going to briefly go for the experienced people. First of all, Arduino is not a product. It's a particular approach to embedded microcontroller development. The Arduino approach is to make rapid prototyping so easy even a beginner can do it. The idea is that rapid prototyping encourages learning through trial and error, which motivates creativity and the desire for some more formal training in order to make progress faster. Arduino accomplishes this by taking the standard developer's tools and adding training wheels for beginners that hide the messy details that you don't really care about. This is what professionals like too, because sometimes when you're just starting out and testing out an idea, a quick and dirty thing that hides most of the details is fine. You just want to focus on the unique part you're bringing to it. So here's how it works on the software side of things. This is the lengthy technical one, and then just be patient with me. You use the GCC toolchain for AVR from the command line to create a ROM image from C programs. Then you burn an EEPROM. That's just like you do it now with embedded microcontroller. work. By building an Arduino, you gain access to a wide range of open source shields, software libraries, and all that saves you time and money. Now, here's the beginner. What if you don't want to burn an EEPROM? Well, the microcontroller in an Arduino kit comes with a bootloader pre-installed. That lets you run the APR-do program from the command line that flashes the BIOS with your ROM file, so you don't need an EEPROM burn. This is one kind of training wheel we're talking about. And by the way, if you buy an Mega microcontroller chip anywhere, and you can burn the bootloader to it because it's all open source and it's out there, you can make it into an Arduino kit kind of thing without paying the money for another Arduino kit. Now, what if you don't want to write a make file? Then you can use the Arduino IDE, just like the programming for a PC. And I consider that another training wheel. Sorry, I don't want to insult anyone who does software development IDEs. What if you don't want to write a C program at all? Well, you have the option of writing a sketch instead. Now, a sketch is just an incomplete C program that only has two functions you write. One's called setup and one's called loop. Both of them take no arguments and have no return value, so they're very simple. The Arduino IDE supplies a main function that calls setup and then runs an infinite loop that repeatedly calls loop. Your set and loop functions can call other C functions that are located either that you've written or they're located in other sketches or in other real C programs. When you click on Verify Compile in the Arduino IDE, the IDE writes the appropriate include statements and function prototypes for you and turns your sketch into a complete C program. Then it compiles that and links it, and you've got a ROM file. Clicking on Upload runs ABR-do and flashes the BIOS with the ROM image you just created. And that's another training wheel. And by the way, you may have heard sketches before. PC users can learn to program in C by starting out with sketches also. There's a Java-based IDE for PCs and Macs. Go to processing.org. That process of finishing off your sketch into a C program is what processing means. And so you really are working up and learning C programming. It's not like a different language. Okay, that's the end of the technical discussion. Thank you very much for your patience and staying with me. And again, you don't have to worry all about it if you're starting. Just follow the instructions on an Arduino project off the internet and then case mod it. And learn the other stuff as you go. So, back to our examples of extreme case modding. For the video game people, video game shield. This is a little board that plugs in and stacks onto your Arduino kit. It has black and white VGA out, audio, an NES controller, and a Wii nunchuck control place to plug things in. Again, software device drivers that are available, and so you can start doing your own console, 8-bit console development with this. For whole games, there's Tetris t-shirt, which is just the same Tetris as in the Altoids-Tin, sewn in using wearables. And another version is Pumptress, the jack-o'-lantern that actually plays Tetris on your front yard. And again, you just take the do-it-yourself project for Tetris and you just put it into a different case. Now, of course, it's not just Tetris. There's Altoids-Simon.
Simon.
Right? Now, there's a lot more possibilities with Altoids-Simon. You can do Simon the Octopus. Whack his four legs as they line up. Now, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, case mod. You can get into all different really creative things, costuming, art installations, and all. Now, I don't sew, and I don't do little kids' toys, but I do knit, and I am into steampunk. So, of course, when I see this, my case modded version of this is Cthulhu says, and Cthulhu says you better do it. The backstory could be, if you do a long enough sequence accurately, you have opened the gates to the ancient ones will come through. So it doesn't have to be all cutesy little things when you're case modding.
Do you have to roll a sanity check after you do that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you use this and that as the base of your game, you could have a three-dimensional embedded game that's not a microcontroller. I mean, it's sort of like bass fishing,
Yes.
but more modern and cooler. And speaking of steampunk, just in case, this is the steampunk breath analyzer. It's the entire breathalyzer built into the Altoids-Tin with an Arduino. And you use it with an Android, a cell phone or a tablet to get the readings. It doesn't have a display built in. That's the other thing. It's with an Arduino, you can have it connect to any Android device because there is software out there that lets you do it, and there are shields that actually do the communications with the Android device. And the last one, steampunk robot is just a sculpture, but for people who aren't aware of what steampunk design means, that's the kind of thing. On the other side this is an artist interactive sculpture. When you type in your to-do list, it hand writes out the to-do list on the adding machine in script. And that's done with an Arduino. And the artist doesn't say it, but pretty much I think that's a Discworld printer. And you put a feather pen in it, and it's furiously scribbling out whatever you said. But that's the kind of thing you can do with an Arduino. That requires more, building skills. Software is already done for you. And things as complicated as the mashup that's Necomini cat ears, that kind of mashup, if you don't know enough hardware to combine two do-it-yourself projects yourself, you can take people who have done a mashup, like now the Necomini kitty ears are out there. You can just take that and build, my Little Pony ears instead. And that concludes the slideshow part. And David, what kind of really cool things have you been doing or seeing with Arduinos?
Well, for us, in the case modding sense, we've actually been, some of it comes close to what we were showing there, and I don't have any slides, but I'll talk you through it, you heard me mention earlier, I actually am a software developer by trade, and I do various different things, but ultimately my pet project is the Starship Horizons Bridge Simulator. And we deal with immersion in that one in many different ways, through lighting and other effects. But what we've been using Arduino for recently is exploring alternate reality gaming in conjunction with a software game. So imagine you're sitting there with 5 or 6 friends playing on the bridge of a starship, and then, well, wait a minute, you need to send an away team down to the planet. So we've actually been taking the idea of wearables and using GPS and other location factors to send the away team out and have Arduinos both on the away team and as location points where they can go out and attempt to scan a certain point. And all of these are communicating in real time to the game engine, so the game engine can know, did the away team complete the mission? Are they failing? Did they get wiped out by the other away team from the enemy craft? But then it opened up a whole multiplayer aspect for us, because you can have 2 different away teams from 2 different enemy ships trying to achieve that one point, and maybe that one point that Arduino will then turn on or off control a certain super weapon in the game. So you've got physical, laser tag and Arduino type things going on with location-based information to say, okay, there's 4 members of the away team that are still alive, and they have control of the waypoint, so therefore in game, the bridge crew can now fire the super weapon that's over on this station over here. And so right now that's actually what we're in development, and that's our big thing.
And how much of that was off the shelf?
Almost.
Drivers and hardware, and you're just cobbling it together?
Yeah, almost every drop of it. Believe it or not, a lot of it from Radio Shack, because they have the whole Arduino section that they've had. Most of it came right off the shelf from there for our rapid, just like you said, rapid prototyping. The only thing we've kind of put into it energy-wise is the actual coding of the game loop that does the transmissions and the communications back and forth. Both with its position information, and we also have variables for things like that it keeps track of their health and a few other factors. And you heard me mention laser tag. We're sneaking that in as well for some fun factors there. But yeah, ultimately, almost everything we've used with the Arduino is literally, in fact, no, I could say to a word, everything was bought off the shelf at Radio Shack. So it's nothing that we had to actually manufacture.
So starting out as game programmers, you were able to add all the hardware without actually having to say, oh, I have to explain that to someone who knows hardware and have them do it for me.
Yeah, and I'm actually not a hardware guy. I mean, I've done all the traditional stuff, any gamer has done over the years with building their own rig and things like that. But in terms of actually breadboarding a processor, I did it many years ago and failed miserably. But extreme breadboarding, which is what you would have to do before a kit like this, was not a skill set I had by any means, or any of the people that work on my team. But being able to literally just put a few components together, and with the joy of the internet, which I wish I had that 30 years ago, by the way.
I love the internet.
Yeah, and I would say this, I mean, we put the first prototype together in a weekend to just be able to get positional information and have the game engine know that this away team members, 100 yards away from the bridge. We did that literally over a weekend and had it working. And then we started adding all the other layers. Now, the thing I kind of want to reiterate, you made during your slideshow talked about, is that if you don't know programming or you don't know hardware, that's still not a roadblock. It really isn't. It's not even about being scared about it. If you don't know it, we're in a wonderful age of information. The internet allows you to be able to watch a YouTube video or read up on a short little list. And the ears, by the way, I had a friend that did that in a little over a day.
Yeah.
And that was their starter project, by the way. They had no previous experience doing anything with hardware, and were able to put that together.
Yeah, I've been watching there's a cable program on making animatronic costumes to work for Henson, a company, on a competition. And the servos they're using to control the eyes and everything, I'm thinking, man, they're not doing any of that with Arduinos. They're doing it with breadboards and things. There was a show on performance stunt people putting electric light wire and black screen with fluorescent lights and putting a small choreographed routine together as a competition. And again, none of them using Arduino. I mean, they're out there with soldering irons and raw components and trying to get these projects done for these really elaborate animated costumes in a 1 week period. And I keep thinking, man, these guys know about Arduinos and these things available. You could knock this stuff together in a couple days and spend 4 days rehearsing rather than 6 days building the costumes and 1 day rehearsing.
Right. Actually, one of the simplest things we did is a captain's armband. So the captain can either abandon ship or raise red alert and things like that. And it's just a simple communication tool. But that was one of the things. Most of our focus has been related to the software. But it really is amazing how simple the Arduino has made any kinds of projects. And by the way, I would say that the case modding wise with the ears, one of the cases they were modding was the head. The joke fell flat, never mind.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It was a bad attempt.
Okay, so this is a panel discussion and sort of forum. What we'd like to do is take your suggestions and ideas and sort of let you know, is that something that's really a starter project, or is that something you should wait until you're a little more experienced with it in hardware or software? And if anyone says any really cool things on the internet that would be good starting points for things like that, please shout them out and share them. So, anyone?
Who's working with Arduino right now as well? Come on, don't be shy.
And no one here has visions of someday being in the vendor marketplace with really cool stuff that they put together for the rest of the year while they learn programming electronics? Yeah, because I vision that this crowd should be into these kinds of things.
Using Makey.
Yeah.
And using that to, taking a PlayStation 2 controller apart and making a controller of that. But also the...
But can I just repeat that? Taking a Makey and taking the controllers apart and making things
just connecting the contacts with the buttons of the PS2 controller.
PS2 controllers.
Yeah, just have a game controller. But then also using the TNC as well for the Game Boy project.
Okay, and then he's using a TC for a Game Boy project.
Yeah, so just making a game controller out of a TNC.
And how intimidating was that to get started with that kind of project?
Not very. All the code's out there already.
And
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
it?
That's exactly right.
It's essentially mashups. It's just glue. It's glue logic and it's glue code.
And I'll ask related to this. How many of you actually modded? You might have found the code on the internet, but they slightly modded it, changed a little bit here and there. How many of you actually worked with the code on the Arduino? In any form, really?
And I'll add one thing. How many people actually for emulators have been writing their own games for emulators? Because that's about the level of coding. I mean, you have a lot of code already written for you, and you have instructions on the internet of how to put it into a ROM image that you can put on a multi-card. It's really not that much more for the coding engines. I mean,
No, not at all.
oops.
Yep. Yes.
I'd like to make a quad rotor hovercraft thing. Is that Is that doable, like a small one? Is that doable with an Arduino?
There are, Google Arduino drones.
Yeah, drones.
Yeah, I mean, just Google it. You will see all the projects that are out there, and if there's, and nothing exactly what you want to do, there'll be something close.
There's at least 2 projects I can think of that are, you can almost take the software and the hardware and not quite off the shelf, but pretty darn close that you can get out there for those. I'd love to, it's funny you asked that because I'd actually love to try one of those.
I have a bunch of problems with actually like making literal cases for things in a dream and stuff like that. So like,
Oh,
any
okay.
advice on like physical outer cases?
I used to have slides,
Like
when I did this,
generic.
when I did this at MAGFest 8.5, I had some slides at the beginning for traditional cases for it and for tool cases, size for the Arduino. And I put them out because I thought, well, I'm wasting a lot of time at the beginning, let's get into the good stuff. But they were all 3D printed. So they were also open source 3D printed instructions for custom expandable cases that have little links and hinges, and you just assemble it into taller and taller and get more shields on top of it. So you make it's either a toolkit, a tool case for carrying our Arduino project and shields while you're working on, but it also could be the final case with just a few modifications to the plans for the 3D printer to make as tall a case as you want, already sized and already meant to be extendable vertically for your Arduino project.
Right. And actually, I'll add the wrist controllers that I mentioned. We actually 3D printed the form factors that we'd actually found one that was already done for cosplay, and it was already ready to go with an Arduino, everything slotted and mounted.
Well, that's right. A lot of the hardware.
It was ready to go. We didn't have to do anything.
Right. A lot of the hardware was for props and costumes, not the software, the fabric itself are already out there as 3D printable or CAD files. So,
And you can use your Arduino to run the 3D printer.
well, the nice thing is, well, the Arduino run a 3D printer, but the nice thing about the 3D printer stuff is that a lot of libraries are starting to have maker days where you get to play with a 3D printer, and many libraries have put in for grant money to have a 3D printer on, just like you would come down, use the internet, use the scanner, use the color printer when you need it. They'll have a 3D printer that you can come down the library and use on a one project at a time job. So that is fast becoming a much easier way to get into rather than investing in how to use a 3D printer.
And this is a little off topic, but I would say that I'm waiting for the day when we can print PCBs, printed circuit boards. We're close. We're actually very close on that.
You actually have them.
They're
Commercial,
not
How
commercial.
expensive?
Yeah,
The question
yeah.
is how expensive
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
as a hobbyist level.
Right.
Actually, there is a printed Arduino. So, in talking about being open source and you can make your own printed circuit boards for your Arduino, not buy the kit, you can use the electrically sensitive ink and actually draw out the Arduino printed circuit board and draw the shield circuits on paper or on plastic with the electric ink and conductive ink. And there are people out there with on Instructables.com is a wonderful source for actually watching people put these things together. So yes, you can print your circuit. You can draw. Actually, not even print your circuit boards. Hand draw.
I have one of the Kickstarter for that. That was yeah.
There's a world of really cool stuff for hobbyists out there and the creative people on the end of it. It's not just cheap training tools for a job, but then again, all these skills are going to be useful in the workplace. Companies sometimes, like I said, for a real company, sometimes it's good enough to have a few shields, slap them together, have some existing code, throw it in there, write your little sketch to just do the functionality, let's see if it's going to work, test it out, and then with a final product, actually go over and design your own custom printed circuit board for a full embedded system, actually write all your code to make sure it's tight and there's no wasted space so you don't waste memory on the ROM chip. But all that is way late in the process. People are doing this all the time at work. And I'm going to call on you, and you know who you are, to mention what you did at college as for a company project for prototyping. It's my nephew David.
Yeah. So I went to UConn recently, just graduated this past May. And for my senior design project, I was working with Sikorsky aircraft. So what they had me do for them was build a sensor in the rotor of the aircraft so it passed the vibrations that existed to tell whether the ball bearings were really bad or not, the bearings were really bad, and the tail was good. And actually, I did all that development with an Arduino and other parts that could be bought off the shelf, and that's how I did my prototype.
And it's not only are real companies doing it, but real companies think it's so easy for beginners to learn. They're contracting it out to colleges for senior design projects for students because, hey, it's that easy to pick up and learn amongst the rest of your engineering degree, engineering coursework. So there's no excuse for people not to get into doing really cool artistic, interactive sculptures, toys, really cool cosplay, really cool game additions to your video game or to your MMO that exist in the real world, which I really think is a lot cooler, sorry if I'm offending anyone, than these augmented reality games that you just play on your cell phone and your Android device, which is sort of nice, but it's not really the same thing as having your own, tricorder, your own risk communicator, and being the away team for somebody sitting in a LAN room playing the software command, bridge control version of it.
But speaking, you triggered something I want to mention this Arduinoist actually, is that in last year's Comic-Con I actually talked to a group. There is a grant-based contest that's been going on for about a year and a half. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's about building a working real tricorder. And it has to achieve 15 different readings of the human body and its environment to be considered eligible to win the prize, the grant. And there are 3 teams I talked to, 2 of which are using Arduinos as their core component for the actual tricorder. And they're using, the majority of the stuff is off the shelf. And that was another thing I kind of want to mention about, for those of you that are thinking about getting into it, you're kind of curious, or you're already involved. What is amazing is not just about the components off the shelf, or the code off the shelf that you can get out there. Like, for example, I probably would say, if you can't, I wonder if I could get a piece of code, a loop, that will read this and tell me that. And if you Google it, you'll probably find it. Which, what I'm saying is that the ability to interconnect things, whether it's, the Arduino with a sensor, or the Arduino with an Android device, or the Arduino reading through another device, an external other component over here, are no different than what we're doing, where it's a piece of software that's using that to control a game. You can really combine things together easier than you think. And this is a tool that lets you do that in ways that you maybe don't realize that the simplicity is confusing to people sometimes, because they assume it's hard. And they assume there's a whole level of difficulty. Oh, that would take me months to learn. And that is not the case.
And I've just, while you're looking about grants and contests, I've been asked by the Global Game Jam people here to say, in a future year, would anyone be interested in participating in a global game jam for Arduino-based games? And
Here at MAGFest.
They're serious at MAGFest. Next year, the Global Game Jam will be for Arduino-based games. Either the full consoles built around things like the VGA VGA seal, where you actually make your own small console, make the console, or it's something deluxe.
Can I enter?
They just want to know, because they don't want to put it out there and get everything organized and have everyone just say, interesting concept, but let me think about it. They'd like to have, at least 5 or 10 people show up to actually compete in it. And if they know, so enter feedback for the MAGFest forum, please let them know that you would actually participate if they had a global game jam event for Arduino-based games. I would appreciate being there next year.
That would be awesome, actually. I didn't know they were thinking about doing
Yes,
that. That's great.
That was one of the suggestions, and they're actually going to say this year that if you want to do it, but they figured they really should be planning more about what kind of support they need to give to people, and have some people on site with like test equipment and voltmeters and things like that. And people would help you with it on that day, because it's such a compressed time. But the other thing is, they're thinking about having an indie games for Arduino-based games and props and wearables. So would anyone be interested in exhibiting something if they had an indie showcase or those kinds of things? Again, at the MAGFest forum on the when MAGFest is done and they had the feedback, then please say, yes, I'm interested in doing wearables, cosplay props, interactive art sculptures, different kinds of games that are augmented reality tie-ins. Please say that, because they will do that at a future MAGFest and give you space to demonstrate your stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm a perfect example, actually. You know, when I told them what I was working on, they're like, dude, we'll give you space, come show, let people play it, let people try it. So I will echo what she's saying is, let them know. If that's something that sounds cool to you, let them know. They will do it. MAGFest has been, I mean, kudos to MAGFest. You know, I've been involved in MAGFest, whether with the arcade department or now exhibiting Starship Horizons for many years now, and they're totally unafraid to try new things and push the envelope in a few areas.
And they are suggesting things that they're not sure anyone's doing yet. It's not just because they've heard about it. The people here, whether they work with it or not, are up on the latest stuff, and they're saying, hey, do you think we have enough people coming who would be interested in actually some organized places demo that, or some talk on that, or a forum, open forum room set aside for that, because they see it, whether they do it or not. The organizers here are really keep up with the culture, and so it's not like you have to convince them of it. And sometimes you'll find out they were just waiting for someone to say yes, we attend that in order to do it. So, and just are people here costumers who would like to put the wearables?
Has anybody done a wearable?
Yes, that please. Yeah,
That was a loaded question, I saw.
Yes. So is that the is that just a signboard, or is that playable?
Oh, it's playable.
Cool.
Screensaver.
Yes, cool.
That's great.
Now, here's my question. Okay, let me go back and restart the slideshow. Because I have one little nit to pick.
No.
Okay, I have a nit to pick with the Tetris t-shirt.
So I'm not that guy, but I do have Tetris on this shirt.
Right, that's why I saw you walk in.
Is that the high score, by the way?
That's his current score.
Now, that's the thing. Why do you guys put it right side up to be played by someone else? Because if I were going to do a Tetris t-shirt, I would do it so I could play it when I'm stuck in line somewhere, and it would be upside down so I could play it.
I like to give other people something to do.
Okay.
It's good for starting conversations.
Well, you're more sociable than I am. I'm just going to do solitary all the time.
Just add a switch. Game mode.
That's true. That's right. Like the old Pac-Man cocktail tables that would switch back and forth.
The idea was an AD switch, so you can switch it from vertical to upright to upside down and switch the controls. That is something you can do with Arduino. You can have the same controls and switch how they're mapped. So you can essentially do keyboard mapping with a controller. And yeah, think that kind of thinking. That's what I mean. Case modding. Think of it as just modifying the case.
We're just changing.
control mapping.
We're just changing how the display outputs.
Well, that's, but yeah, he's just looking at a simple switch,
What?
software control that goes between the two different modes with the same hardware. It's that kind of thing you can do easily with an Arduino, that if you were doing discrete components and actually wiring up buttons to a matrix, it's really hard to reverse the mapping when it's all wires, and like a telephone switchboard. So anyone else like to say the really cool stuff they would like to do and either sell it in the vending area in a future year or wish someone else would do it? Yes?
I want to do, I have a lot of different things that I want to do with lights and with characters in the X-Men. So there's one, just have like a disco ball, and I'd like to get the lights to be able to reflect off of it. And I want to do something with color-changing fabric, if I was ever able to do that electronically or with lights or with something, so that I could do the Phoenix and change the colors from green to red.
Have you considered the temperature-controlled color-changing fabrics, like little dolls where you do their hair, or when you put the cold water in it, it changes color?
I looked at it, or the ones that change by, I'm just not sure if I can get enough control from it, but I can try it out.
But one of the things you should look at is Christmas tree light controls.
Okay.
Because essentially, you put them in a costume, you're just controlling a set of lights. And they have strings of lights that individual control of each LED. They're expensive right now, but if you use those judiciously and just standard lights that just switch on and off the color cycle, the rest you get. And man, I can't think of the project. Someone had a costume in the Canadian version of the American or The Voice, the singing contest. There's a Canadian version, and someone posted on YouTube the costume they designed for, I guess it was the finale for one of the singers, and it was a completely Arduino-based light-changing costume that at different parts of the song, they switched in with the overhead lighting and synced the light display, as well as it kept to the beat so it wouldn't get out of sync with the band. And that's somewhere on YouTube, and I can't remember who she was, but I'm pretty sure it was the Canadian version of the Voice contest.
Yes.
I've been wanting to do some stuff with music-driven visuals. So I do stuff that's either MIDI-driven in terms of which would be easier technologically, but more likely in the other option would be to be something that is frequency sensitive, so that at certain points or certain areas of the music that is heard, it can change something. And I know less about that line of thought.
There are many projects out there on PC for spectrum analysis and pulling apart the frequency components from a music analysis point of view and a voice analysis point of view. For emotion, you should look into things for like emotional content in voices and stress levels in voices, because that kind of software. Well, no, I'm saying that software, that kind of analysis, also does the mood of the music. So you don't have to program in, well, I recognize this song starts or this beat, and I get this mood lighting. You can do things like anything that is music that would invoke that mood, would invoke that lighting sequence or that game sequence, or that on some kind of display. They're doing a lot of things on recognizing the emotional impact of voices that carry over to the mood that music gives you. And have things directly with music recognition. But I come from the AI, so I want more of the really cool stuff I could use a microphone and build into like an RPG for more intelligent characters.
Yeah, I have many chiptunes friends that have done much more with that than I have, certainly. But yeah, she's right that there should be plenty of examples, or at least something that's very close to what you're talking about, where you could almost get verbatim the code to put into that pretty straightforward.
And if you can't, you can just get the software that makes for an Arduino spectrum analyzer, and actually, start from there. And once you have it pulling out the different frequency components for you, just build on it any programming you need.
And I don't know if I don't have any off the top of my head, but there's many Arduino sites, and because we went to several of them, where we didn't necessarily find a piece of code that we needed, and we were in a hurry. We actually posted in the forums and said, hey, we're looking to do this. Has anybody done anything similar or could share a little snippet? And one guy actually, in about an hour, posted 30 lines of code. He's like, here it is. He's like, go have fun. And we go, okay. But there are communities like that where people are, they love this stuff. They want to see cool stuff made with it. And if they can tell, hey, this person doesn't really have necessarily the skill set to do that yet, you can get people that'll help you out. And it might just be a little tiny bit of code, but what you can do with that and learn from it and say, okay, I see what they did here. Oh, well, that's how that works. And then you can learn how to change this one little thing here and that little thing. Before you know it, you're programming.
Well, that's the Arduino strength. If someone says, I need help doing this, the help probably is less than 100 lines of code, because the rest of it is going to point you to a software library that already exists, a device driver that already exists, a do-it-yourself project for the hardware that already exists, and even mashups that already exist that are close to what you want. And the specific help you're going to need is, half an hour of someone who's done it before saying, oh yeah, okay, I can do the little glue logic that you need, a little bit of code that customizes what's already out there for you. So it moves really fast in learning. You can have all these details hidden from you and get the end product out there. All you're interested in is the end product and the effect. But if you get really curious about it, you can easily delve down into either the hardware side or the software side first and start to really make unusual custom things and be the first one. A new device comes out, a new sensor comes out, You can be the first one to write the device driver for it, if you really get into that end. And if not, you'll be stuck waiting, 3 months, 6 months after some cheap part comes out, either an input or output device comes out, till someone else puts a device driver up on an entire software library to use it up on the internet.
Yeah, and I'll add to that in the sense that everything that's out there and has been out there for at least 3 to 6 months, there will be an example in code that you can learn from. Most of them components have some form of a hello world anyway that come with them, the majority of them.
And remember, some people's hobby is actually writing instructions for other people and demonstrating and teaching. So this is also a great hobby for people who like to do instructions. It's not as rigorous as having to teach where you have to have a whole lesson plan. But if your hobby is writing how-to articles, this is like the greatest thing. You can be like popular and famous overnight for a really cool do-it-yourself, where people actually write to you and say, and I've done this with it, or can you help me with this thing with it? And you can build an entire community around a kind of do-it-yourself project. And some people are at the core of those instructions. Other people actually want to get the end product out, either in art or wearables or games. So it's a very nice, non-competitive, cooperative environment for Arduino. That's what makes the open source work, because like I said, you're not going to put anything out there that is directly competitive with you,
Right.
because it's based on a proprietary game. Okay, and all your hardware has already been out there. You're just coupling it together. So
Correct.
someone can do something similar, but for another entirely different MMO, it's not going to be competing directly.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I always kind of call it, the fancy term is convergence, but with Arduino, I kind of call it, technical Legos. Because it is, with all of the tools and information out there, and the knowledge you can garner from just reading some forms, you really can put this together almost like Legos and get it running in very little time. And there's so many different, and actually I'll ask, how many people here you're curious and you're here looking into it, you have friends that are working on it, you want to do Arduino, but you haven't yet? Okay, because I know we have a bunch of people that have. Yeah, there's so many projects out there where you could actually grab from Amazon or many different sites, ready to go projects that can teach you end to end. It's not just buying the board and it's in your hand, you don't know what to do with it. There are projects that will give you everything from start to finish, and you'll end up with, any number of things, whether it's a little robot arm or a little guy that runs around that has a camera. There's so many out there. So I would tell you, get one of those or one of the many different projects that interest you as your starter kit. Before you know it, by the time you're done and you've got a running project that you've had your handheld the whole way through, you've probably done a tad bit of programming, you've done construction of that hardware, and you're already most of the way there to then taking that further and doing something else with it.
And when all else fails, just Google exactly how you would describe your final project if it existed, and add the word Arduino. And you'll be surprised how many things come up, like the entire costume with lights that actually sync to the band and to the actual lighting board in a costume based on Arduino. I had no idea that existed, but in looking for pictures, costumes on Arduino, I came across that. Unfortunately, it was a YouTube video, and they didn't have a still of the costume lit up.
Okay, semi-useless trivia, but perfectly relevant to this topic, is talking about rapid prototyping. How many people have been to Disney World? Okay. In the last few years, they have new mouse ears that during the nighttime parades and during the fireworks and at the Hollywood Studios at the big Spectre Magic event, they will light up and light in sequence to whatever is going on around them. Okay. Now, the final product is not Arduino, but they prototyped it that way. They had staff members walking around the park with the ears on, testing and rapid prototyping every aspect of that process with nothing but off-the-shelf components.
And for the technical people, the Wi-Fi that you get with the Arduino is, and I forgot the technical term because I don't work with it, but I saw it. It's the low power Wi-Fi, so you don't need permission to do a Wi-Fi version of it. You can just have a little local connection. I have no idea.
Is it Zigbee?
No, it's not. Well, you can do Zigbee too, but it's actually Wi-Fi, and there is a new low power Wi-Fi that you don't need permission to use. You don't need whatever registration or something.
Zoning.
Yeah, frequency assignments are not interfering with other ones. It's the hobby. It's like the ham radio channels that are reserved for ham radio versus the FCC regulated channels. They have a low power Wi-Fi like that, and they have devices out there that are shields for your Arduino. So you have Wi-Fi that is safe to actually use in public. You don't have to, like ham radio operator, make sure your broadcast tower is not too large and doesn't interfere with your neighbors or crack down on you. You don't have any of those problems with the low power Wi-Fi. And it is an alternative to Zigbee. You'll find more other devices that are Wi-Fi and you can communicate with, such as an Android or iPhone device.
At least it wasn't the Colossus roar. Just saying.
Oh, noise canceling for the Colossus War, for the conference room.
Somebody should invent that for MAGFest. Get right on that. As a guy who worked in the arcade and ran the tournaments for many, many, many years, trust me, I would love to see that invented.
So, yeah, we only have a minute or two, and anything else anyone would like to ask? Anyone who actually is thinking of a career in this and wants to know what you put on the resume, that you've done this as a hobby, that makes it look more professional, like you've actually had some training? Is that something? Yeah, anyone? Fine.
How do you advance from the sketch kind of thing to actual full-on C? Like, there seems to be a huge schism.
It isn't, but
No.
go ahead.
Okay, for a while, I wasn't getting the processing.org and sketches because I didn't understand, since I program in 25 languages, and several of which are machine codes for different machines. I didn't really get the idea of what you were doing, and I thought, oh my goodness, another beginner language is like learning BASIC all over again, or logo with turtle graphics, and I'll have to do something else, and why bother? But it looks really cool and easy to learn. And then, as I got preparing for this talk, and I said, I'm going to have to address what the heck sketches are, because they appear again, processing the sketches in the Arduino. So what the heck is it? And so I went into it. If you know C programming, and you try to figure out what you're doing with the Arduino IDE, there is nothing on the Arduino site, or practically anything on the internet, that will tell you what you're doing as a C programmer. But if you happen to luck out and decide to Google GCC toolchain Arduino, you'll find plenty of people who will walk you through how to get rid of the Arduino IDE and actually use the standard tools. And I go, wait a minute, let me work from those back to what they're saying on the Arduino website about the C sketches. And I put it together that a sketch is simply a C program that is missing everything that makes it a C program. You don't need the include files, because when you tell the IDE that you want to pull in code from this other file, it writes the include file, include statement for you. The only thing you can do with the main program is you can run setup once, and an infinite loop run loop. And neither of those functions can take an argument, and neither will have a return value. But they're C code, and they take any valid C code, and they can call any other subroutine that's any valid C code. And you can put them in other sketches. You can call them directly from any C program that exists. The IDE accepts both sketches and C code as if they were the same. Makes no distinction between the two. So if you want to learn C programming, write your own main and put in your own include and function prototype statements, and your sketch is now a real C program. So I would suggest, if you want to learn C program, start from there. Take your sketch and rename it as a C program, and try to write the proper include statements and function prototypes and a real main function that returns an integer and has the command line arguments in it. And when you get that to successfully compile, you will have now learned C programming from sketches.
Is there any way to actually get a C program out of the sketch? Like, where you can actually see and use it, rather than it automatically doing it and then compiling it?
The final result, yeah.
You probably have more experience than I, but from what I've been seeing, and down the library they had a little quickie intro to Arduino that I took so I could see what it's like from the beginner's point of view when someone is teaching beginners. I had to, while they were going on about what to do, and I put the Blink demo program in my little Arduino, I spent the time at the class trying to figure out where the heck the ROM image was so I could save it on a USB drive and look at it later, the hex editor. And the Arduino IDE does not make it easy to find a file they give no name to. It is stored in the default place they store it, but I'm near Googling because of the library, the internet, and joining the lecture and helping other people get their little project together, I'm Googling like mad, where the heck is the file that they compiled? They don't give that file a name, so you can't look it up on the Arduino site. They just say, first you click verify compile, and they call it verify because it's less scary, because if it compiles correctly, you verify that your code worked. Code had no typos in it. And then they say upload it to your small device, which I have a problem with because I upload to the mainframe, I download to my little embedded device, but that's because I'm old school. And then you click upload afterwards, and whatever was the last file you compiled in that IDE session, that's what it's going to send to your Arduino. So it never refers to it by name. And it was really frustrating for me. I spent 20 minutes before they got around to me in the class, and I had to hide the fact that I'm just, I'm a rigger. I was just there to observe the other beginners. But where do they put that stuff out? And what I would do is I just use the command line and use real C programs so I could find my file.
Well, the only thing I'll add to that, in regard, I had the same curiosity, but I would say that for somebody who's trying to learn that stuff, it actually has so many little helper functions and other things to deal with the compile function that it actually is more complex than you probably you can certainly learn from it, but there's a lot that goes into just making those two little sections of code work well. So there's a lot of extra, so it's not quite just looking at a few extra lines of code that they added and you can see the tricks they do. There's a lot more in there. And actually, go ahead, sorry.
No, I just want to add to that. In the Arduino IDE, because I've always turn on verbose for compilation and flashing. Verbose for compilation is great because you can see all the warnings going on. But verbose for flashing is also useful because if you copy it out of the IDE, you can see the path to your ELF file and the compiler flags that it's using and how it's calling GCC.
I suspected there was an ELF file in there at some point from the other things I've read, not on the Arduino site. But like the Arduino, they sort of say, look, you're a beginner, if you can't use the command line tools, you don't want to know what's going on those windows. Trust me, if you want to learn the command line tools, go to a tutorial on the command line tools.
Cool. And in general, if you're trying to learn C or some of the other things, something we haven't talked about that I'd like to mention is, I'm assuming not everybody's from right around the corner here. Everybody's from various parts far away. I'm from 3 hours away. Maker spaces. If you have a local, hacker space or maker space, I guarantee you people at those facilities have done plenty of testing, playing, and tweaking. So if you have an idea, or if you want to work with something, or if you want to learn something, some of these will have workshops on beginners, on various things, including this. I would encourage you, if you haven't been to one, to take a look. I'll guarantee you, within a reasonable distance from pretty much everybody in the modern age now, thankfully, we have at least some form of a hackerspace or a makerspace. They're pretty amazing places.
And if you're into costume and props, go to a steampunk event, because their panel discussions will involve all the mechanical engineering and the costuming aspects of building and fabricating props. And once you have hinged props that use little gears and springs, you can put an Arduino in to control it. The trick is doing the mechanical engineering part of actually getting the hinges and everything. Someone had a nice little electric toy that's an elephant with a really cool moving trunk that's scaled, layers of scales, and a flexible mechanical toy. And it's just a simple little on and off switch, and it just winds up the cabling. It raises the trunk and lower it, but it moves so smoothly and looks so cool. It's like, yes, I want to buy one, and I want to put an Arduino in it. So it does more than just the one thing. It's got a motion sensor that just turns it on and does its one thing. And the little servo winds up the little cable, raises the trunk, and then relaxes it again. It moves so coolly. I go, man, I need a mechanical engineer on my team. The software and a little bit of electronics is not going to do it. At some point, you need someone who knows how to build things. I look at the costumes, and I say the same thing. I need someone who can sew. I need a costume designer working with it at some point. But again, if you're starting from there, adding the stuff we're good at is the easy part. Doing the mechanicals, doing the costume design, that's the part that, honestly, it takes longer to learn and it's harder to find someone to teach you and to pick up. The software and the electronics is really the easy part to add to it.
Especially with all the resources you have available today.
And since we're going to need people who are mechanical engineers and costume designers at some point for our Arduino projects, we would encourage as many of you as possible to be familiar with the Arduino. Anything else, or we'll wrap up. And if anyone would like to see an actual embedded development system, better microprocessor development system on a proto board, my nephew David has one he can show you as well. So,
And we've got the game.
and please talk to the Tetris, a t-shirt gamer who's actually built his own.
Okay, and by the way, for that gaming shirt, I have to ask, as an arcade guy, do you have like a shelf for the quarters? Darn it.
You need the change maker on around the waist for the quarters.
It's always a virgin free.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.